Hello, welcome to week 50 inside Intuitive Momentum Fitness. And today we're talking about when self-sabotage or self-protection becomes self-sabotage. And it's something I'm still kind of right in the middle of, and so I don't feel as articulate about this as I like to be, or I prefer to be, and as I hopefully soon will be. So bear with me as we kind of navigate through this. But I'm noticing this in a lot of areas in my life now, where I have grown past the usefulness of things that have kept me safe before. And some of it may be that I'm, just growing past it, and other areas may be that I've grew past it a long time ago, but I'm just becoming aware of it. So it seems to be every area of my life where I'm realizing that the habits and the ways that I have protected myself are actually hindering me in my growth and expansion. One really simple area, for an example, is pickleball, or really sports in general. I also play volleyball and soccer, and I just play pickleball more often because there's more people to play with, and it happens more often. So sometimes in those situations, I am with people that are very competitive and kind of get angry, and it takes me back, it flashes me back to when I was little, and my dad was to kind of soothe his own insecurity, he made me feel worthless and stupid, and I knew that's what he needed. He needed to have that reassurance, that ego boost. And so it's weird to think back that I was actually cooperating in demonstrating how worthless and stupid I was. But like, there was no winning. I was either going to be punished and experience a lot of pain, or things calmed down a little bit if I was absolutely worthless. So obviously that is not a pattern that I want to keep going, and I haven't in a lot of ways, but then I'm noticing it, like I'm fine-tuning this, where it seems to come up where I feel like, oh, this person is really competitive, they're going to be really frustrated if I make any mistakes, and so what do? I start making mistakes. Instead of like releasing them and my assumptions of their intentions or desires, and just focusing on me and just focusing on the movement and the play and the beauty of flow and movement and all the things I really like about sports, I'm like needing to quickly make whatever is going to happen, so I'm not tense and wondering when it's going to happen. So so that's kind of strange, but then also, like, I'm looking back on my dating history and realizing that some of the big fears in that are related to losing my autonomy, because my most intense relationship was with my dad and I had zero autonomy. And so then it's in my 20s, it was easy for me to just instantly disappear as myself and become whatever the person seemed to need or want me to be. And I don't want to do that anymore, but instead of like actually being open to dating, I've just really avoided it. As if like codependency is the only option in dating, and I don't want that, so I don't date. Instead of realizing or practicing how strong and a good communicator and all those things that I am and am choosing to be. Similar with money, I'm realizing that there's a fear around having lots of money and being successful because that makes me responsible to be the one to set boundaries and to steward it well and to be responsible for the outcome of that money. And so, like, avoiding money is not a good option. It's helped me in the past when my trauma was so intense that, minimizing the potential stressors, it was a good thing, but not anymore. And then I'm noticing also, like, I'm fine-tuning the nutrition that works for my body, and it's getting really, really detailed, pretty limited, and what most people would think is extreme, but it's really, really working for me. And when I vary from that, I'm finding it just doesn't work to vary from that. And yet I'm also having a hard time sticking up for myself or even just explaining what I need. And so, like, I've got friends that are vegan or vegetarian. I've got family that are gluten-free, like officially gluten-free, like they instantly get sick if they have any gluten. And they are really good at explaining their dietary preferences and needs. And I have always been kind of a chameleon. Like, I'll eat as strict as I need to when I'm by myself, but then I kind of choose not to when I'm around others because I don't want to be weird or offensive or act like I'm superior or draw attention to myself or any of those things. And so, like, those are all areas that I'm kind of really actively looking at and reviewing. So I'm probably going to become more articulate about these things, but I wanted to share the post that I shared on Monday. Forgot to take you guys until yesterday, but Stephen Porges, who is the one who is largely responsible for our understanding of the vagus nerve and the vagal nerve theory and soothing trauma responses and understanding trauma responses and all of that. So he's a wealth of wisdom and information, but he says trauma compromises our ability to engage with others by replacing patterns of connection with patterns of protection. So it's similar to saying self-protection ends up as self-sabotage. We prioritize protection over connection. And for good reason. We've had experiences that were painful and traumatic and damaging, and yet they don't serve us after a while. So then it's important to be able to release the fear around it. And I think it takes a lot of vulnerability to try again in areas where you've been greatly damaged. So, so what I said with that meme on Monday was, this is something I've been thinking about, how moments begin to show up that reflect our survival mechanisms have outlived their purpose and are actually keeping us stuck rather than protecting us. I'm experiencing some of these and wish to observe them more closely. The more we heal, the more we'll outlive the usefulness of our defenses. So in the same way that to leave my home at 22 and join the Marines and then, at 23, go find temporary jobs, then go to school, and then find work, and like all the things. Like I was constantly having to step out of the comfort zones that I had, and I was constantly terrified, and I had to feel okay with being uncomfortable and being overwhelmed and being scared, because that was the only way forward, the only way to be an adult. And I think as we go on, we keep looking for, okay, I think there's a tendency to feel like being scared and overwhelmed is what you do when you're younger and you don't know what's going on. And then as you become an adult, then theoretically you should not have to experience that as often. But I think actually the way we stay youthful and pliable and growth oriented and able to expand, we will constantly be in that situation of stepping out of our comfort zone and constantly be moving into areas that have been scary and overwhelming in the past, and we're finally brave enough and courageous enough to move into. So so that's, we just have to carry it on. Once you've arrived and you feel like you don't need to experience overwhelm and stepping out of comfort zones anymore, then you've stopped living. There's a quote, I can't remember who said it, but most men die when they're 20 and are dead men walking till they're 70 or something like that. Once you've decided that you've lived long enough to not need to learn anything more, you're already dead, because you're just repeating the same year over and over and over again and not growing and learning and expanding. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like, oh man, I've got so much growing to do, you're actually in a really good place, and you're actually really brave, and you're actually really courageous, and you should be proud of yourself for being in this spot in life. So good job, way to go. And yeah, we're always going to be learning and growing if we're expanding and staying humble and staying relevant. So I want to get to your comments. Robin says, I absolutely agree. It is as if a veil has been lifted, and I see this in my own life so much more clear now. I'm so thankful. That's awesome. Yeah. I'm curious if that felt like, if there was a season that felt like you had learned enough, and then all of a sudden you're realizing, wait, I have more I can learn. Because it's weird how that happens, where we learn some amazing life lessons and valuable things that we can share with others, and then we get rocked again and I feel like we're starting over again, and I hope that's an ongoing aspect of my life. So, and then Sally, mom, says, for sure, I know I am in protection mode. I wanted safety so much for so long and got the opposite. So now I feel like it is up to me to protect myself. That takes precedence over everything else. I've created my own limitations, but I feel safe in my little parameters. I don't know how to see it any differently. I think for me, I tend to picture this, and I've been drawn to this picture over and over again, but there's a lot of surfers here on the coast, and I don't surf. I'm not much of a water person, but I've worked at the lodge in Pacific City that is a great spot for surfing, so watched a lot of surfers out there, and of course love Bethany Hamilton and her story and the movie Soul Surfer. And I think it's amazing, and it's a beautiful sport, and so much beauty in the motion of it. But like surfing, you're reading these waves, you're riding these waves, and you have very little control out there in the ocean. You're like not powerful compared to the waves, but you can be powerful over yourself. And so the way a surfer rides the waves is the way I feel like we ride life. And we can't control life, and we can't control things that happen, but we can control ourselves. And so that feeling of safety is in reality mostly an illusion, but we can have a feeling of safety in the trust that we have of ourselves. Like, I know I'm going to stand up for myself. I know I'm going to speak up for myself. I know I'm going to set boundaries for myself. I know I'm going to leave situations that don't feel good. I'm going to say what I need to say and all that. And for periods of our lives, that may not be the case, especially if it's not safe to speak up or set boundaries or whatever. But as we become stronger, it's so important to begin practicing those things, because a lot of times where we learned, or when we learned that we weren't safe, was when we actually weren't safe. So when we were small children and we had needs and we spoke up about those needs and then got punished for that, or were ignored or rejected, like at that time, that is a big, overwhelming, scary, terrifying moment to experience. So it's like we grow up continuing to believe that we are that vulnerable, that powerless, that unheard. And it reminds me of the elephant in countries where elephants are, and where elephants are used as transportation and U-Haul trucks and stuff like that. Baby elephant will be tied to a stake, and baby elephant will try to get away from the stake, and it won't be able to. And so for the rest of its life, all the owner has to do to keep it in one spot is to take that rope and a stake and tack it into the ground. And even though the elephant actually pulls trees out of the ground for work, it won't even think to pull the stake out and wander off. So sometimes those lessons that we learn early on get stuck with us, and we have to be willing to test those assumptions and test those realities as we get older. So yeah, I totally get that. Mom, it's just like you create a safety net for yourself, a safe haven, and then it's hard to step out of that and do something different. But you've got your back, and that, I think, is the key. You can trust yourself as you move forward. So that's what I'm trying to do, like remind myself of in the relationship area. First 23 years of my life, I was very codependent, and my safety depended on me being codependent, like being very caring of my dad for survival, and I could not be my own person. So it's really hard for my body not to freak out when I think about getting that close to someone again, even though it's something that I really, really want. So I have to remind myself, I've got my back. I will take care of me. I will speak up for me. I can set boundaries for me. I will not lose my autonomy. I will not disappear in the relationship. So valuable, so important for me to remember that about myself. Let's see, looks like we've got one more comment. I'm just looking at that here. Okay, cool. So I will jump to that momentarily. Cool. All right. So let's see. So Danielle said next, for me, anyone that remotely resembles a person who has hurt me in the past, for example, things they like, I have to hurt me in, for example, things they like, I have to fight putting my guard up. I have to tell myself that everyone is different and deserves a chance. Don't stereotype guys who watch football. So yeah, and I can, totally understand, like, there's been the example of, if some guy with a mustache was one who molested you in the past, then your body might have a panic attack every time you see a guy with a mustache. And obviously, logically, that they're not all the same type of person, but it's really, really hard. So I feel like first, it's so important to have self-compassion. Don't instantly respond with judgment or shame around your immediate reaction. Respond first with tons of self-compassion. Like, what you went through was real, and so it's important not to gaslight yourself when that reaction comes up, even if that reaction is not ultimately helpful. So have compassion on yourself first, and then think, okay, what could be different here? There's a lot of things that I don't know for sure, so there could be something very different happening. One thing that my spiritual mentor is always talking about is anomaly, and looking for anomaly and choosing anomaly, meaning this type of situation has always gone this way in my life. So the more I expect it to happen, the more it will happen. And if I want to experience something different, then I need to be open to something different. And that's where she talks about looking for and choosing anomaly. Okay, in this situation, it looks like things are going this certain way. I could respond in the way I've always responded, or I can choose to try to experience an anomaly here, something new, something different. And that's been really, really helpful. Even just that idea has been helpful for me to come into a situation when my body is tensing up and I'm like, oh man, this is not good. I don't like this. I get to, in that moment, like, hey, I'm going to look for an anomaly here. I'm going to be open to an anomaly, something different to happen. And that's been extremely helpful. So thank you, Danielle. And then Nadi says, catastrophizing. Oh, how I'd love to break this very unhelpful coping mechanism. I just worried my way through my transition, which has been full of so much support and ease. I feel silly. So again, don't feel silly. I love that you have felt so much support and ease through this big transition that you're experiencing. And it is easy to catastrophize, and I think our old brain is built for survival, so we tend toward a survival mindset. We tend toward survival mode, and catastrophizing is easy, and especially if you've got a lot of good evidence to point to in the past, then your mind's like, wait a minute, this is super dangerous, better be ready for a worst case scenario. And I love that you had this experience of support and ease to collect for your counter arguments. it's like there's two lawyers in your brain arguing in front of the jury, and the more experienced lawyer is the one with all of the examples of how unsafe life is and how dangerous it is, and all the evidence of everything that you've experienced. And so it's got a lot of documents that it can point to and pull up evidence of its decision, its persuasion. And so now you are needing to be open to giving your other lawyer evidence. And so because there's been so much support and ease, now you've got some good data that you can pull from. So really use that and revel in that. So that is awesome. Yeah, lots of self-compassion, but a lot of good evidence too. So thank you, Nadi, for sharing that. Would love continued updates as you see more good things come from your risk taking or what feels risky. So then Lucy says, over the past few months, I have been uncovering my triggers, and now that I'm wiser, they just make so much sense, even though I have always known they were an issue. I try to go back to where they came from, and this is a good process, so she describes this great process. I try to go back to where they came from and feel them through me. Part of this is just witnessing that experience, because there weren't adults in our lives that were really often able to just witness what we were experiencing and just be with us in those scary emotions, in the overwhelm, in the fear, in the pain. So we get to be that adult for ourselves. So I try to go back to where they came from and just feel them through me. I watch different YouTube videos, and they all say the same thing, that our emotions outweigh our intellect every time. And there's a reason for that. The heart is 60 times more electrically powerful than the brain and 5,000 times more magnetically powerful. So the heart, the emotions are way, way more powerful than thoughts or the brain. So kind of tuning into, they're connected. The emotions are connected to thoughts. Thoughts are connected to emotions. So thoughts are the clearer indicator of what beliefs you might be holding on to. But the way you feel is really powerful, really overwhelming. So in like saying positive mantras or positive self-talk, it's not as powerful unless you feel the emotions that are associated with it. So so the emotions are very, very, very powerful. So she says, our emotions outweigh our intellect every time. So when I realize I am stressed, I don't act. Breathe. I have been taking time to breathe now whenever I feel stressed or triggered. Something I saw on a Jay Shetty and Will Smith video. Divine, an ad called it that. Divine has been feeding me great YouTube videos to watch this past couple of weeks. They said, when you're triggered, do the 4-box breathing. Learn to breathe. We have so many sayings around breath. I am out of breath. I need to breathe. I need to take a breather. Let me catch my breath. Let me take a breath. Made so much sense to me. I wrote it down in my big sketch pad where I keep a lot of notes at my fingertips. Often I'm telling myself these days, you are safe. Just anxious sometimes. It helps just to say that to myself. Finally figuring out how to hold the space for my friends and not give suggestions. That's really huge. Sometimes we go immediately to the intellectual rather than just holding space and kind of holding them in our energy. Let's see. Hope I can make it at 3 Mountain Time today. Not sure I can, but I will watch the replay. Still talking to men on dating apps, not just throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So growing there, leaning in to trust, and the most trusting myself, comforting inner child that no matter what happens, we got this. So good job. Good job staying vulnerable and open, especially with the dating apps. I know that's a particular key area for you, and that's something that I'm realizing, wow, I'll go long stretches without even being on a dating app. And like, if I want to meet someone, maybe that would be good to stay open to that. So yeah, thank you for the challenge. And thank you for sharing really good insights. Focus on the breathing and tell yourself, we've got this. So yeah, good job. And then Adam just added his comment. So Adam says, interesting timing of this post. Some very recent events have super highlighted these types of reactions in myself. My birthday was 2 days ago, and I had a party on Saturday to celebrate it because Mondays suck. I'm in a new city of a few months, and I don't know a lot of people yet, but I've kind of been adopted by some of my roommates' friends. So we decided to have a party over the weekend. At first, I was hesitant for several reasons, but we went ahead with it anyway. I only wanted to have maybe 2-3 people over in our small place, but somehow the guest list kept growing. When the party arrived, we filled our small place to capacity, and it turned out to be a great, fun success, more than I had expected. But even, and especially with the party turning out well, my responses to the company were revealing. I was very uncomfortable having a lot of people around, especially when I was the center of attention, and my anxiety kicked into overdrive. Having just escaped a very traumatic, toxic situation only a few months ago, I've been kind of hermiting, and my nervous system only recently has calmed down. Some other interesting dynamics about the crowd also seemed to have set me off in different ways. It was strange that for my birthday party, there were several people there who showed up that I was meeting just for the first time, and none of my family had come, even though some had been invited. Also, coincidentally, one woman that attended that I met that night looked very similar and was from the same country as my violent and abusive ex-wife. This woman was very nice, however. Yeah, so many, man, that's a lot of potential triggers all in one situation. That's amazing. Altogether, there were some very strange dynamics that evening that kicked up seemingly all of my anxiety triggers all at once. And even though the party was super fun and turned out great, by the next day I was pretty much having a breakdown and almost in the bathroom puking. Could have been the alcohol too, haha. But all of these stuffed emotions coming up and being triggered did bring up some awareness of where I am currently at psychologically. And I think I was actually able to clear some of that out physically and energetically afterwards. So that's really amazing. That's pretty intense. Yeah. My mom responds to that saying she can relate to needing recovery time after a gathering. So yeah, it sounds like in general you are more of an introverted personality, meaning that you get your energy from alone time and you lose energy being around people, even if you enjoy being around people and even if you're a very big people person. So yeah, I'm usually, have a limit when I'm out with friends or party or whatever, like 2-3 hours is plenty. 4 hours sometimes is too much. So even just that aspect can be a lot, especially meeting people for the first time and then being the center of attention, and then all the recent triggers, and having that one lady that looked very similar from the same country as your ex. Just wow, that's so much. But hopefully your actual birthday was nourishing to yourself, to your soul, and it sounds like you've learned some things, reflected on what happened, and like you said, you may have processed through some of those triggers as well. So I'd be curious to know, especially as this week goes on, as we go further on, if you feel a shift because of what happened in like your connections, and feeling able to be outgoing again in your new city, your new place, and build community again. I know that recovering from a traumatic relationship can take a while, and it's totally okay to be patient with yourself and allow however much time needs to happen. But that's amazing and really intense, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. If you're watching the live or the replay, and you have some experiences with this, it would be awesome to keep this conversation going and just encourage each other with all of this. And as always, if you have questions about the exercises, so I want to kind of reiterate some of the key points of the fitness aspect of this program: keeping it simple, doing the simple things, emphasizing strength training. Strength training is the key to longevity, I believe. So your body is going to be dismissing bone and muscle density unless you're doing things that help you stay strong. And strength training is the key to that. And that's why I've made a super simple program in the app. If you're following that, hopefully you're seeing some consistency and eventually some progress, and you will start feeling stronger. If you have any questions about any of it or how to apply it personally, then don't hesitate to reach out. I love talking about this stuff and assisting you. And thanks for being here, and hope you are well. Have a great week. Love you guys.